Here we got it, Rudy and the dogs. Last night's Flat Earth British live show were brilliant. I only caught the last 10 minutes, unfortunately. 20 minutes live, and I'm just watching it back this morning. And there's a lot of cannibals talk last night, with the missing dead and stuff. And so a lot of people talking about cannibals, and that reminded me of a story from when I was a kid. This guy, Sawnley Bean, Scotland's most famous cannibal, late 15th century. This, I warn you now, is grisly. If this is true, it's goddamn grisly, but this is documented evidence of cannibalism in this country. Well, in Scotland, not fused in England, in Scotland. And it is grisly, right? I warn you now, if it's grisly. Right, so I'm going to read an article here, and it's from a site called Historic UK. And hang on, what did that write and say there? A rout of savages, wild and bloody, filled the entrance to a wide cave beneath us. Okay. 5 particularly gruesome Hollywood blockbuster films have featured a character known as Hannibal Lecter, otherwise by his descriptive nickname Hannibal the Cannibal. Right, forget that, I'll give you the story, right? Little is known for certain about the life of Sawnley Bean for sure, right? However, he's believed to have been born in the East Lothian in the late 15th century and was a tanner by trade. The latter part of his life is a little better documented following his relocation across country to Ayrshire and his marriage. The newlywed Mr. and Mrs. Sawnley Bean set up home at Benane Cave by Ballantrae in Ayrshire, Scotland. Benane Cave was rather an imposing abode, with tunnels penetrating the solid rock and extending for more than a mile in length. In addition, the accommodation featured lots of side passages where a young couple could extend into and convert over the next 25 years to accommodate a growing family. The cave's entrance was flooded for several hundred metres twice a day at high tide, a nice draft exclusion feature. Lacking a trade, it was Sawnley's plan to support his new life on the proceeds of robbery. That's a modern day version of Sawnley Bean what they made apparently. I'll try and get that repulsive picture off, sorry. My Kindle's chosen this time to freeze. Right, lacking a trade, he decided to support his new wife on the proceeds of robbery. It proved a simple enough matter to ambush travellers on the lonely narrow roads that connected the villages of the area. Then it dawned on him that in order to help make sure that he could never be identified for his crimes, he should murder his victims, to avoid those unnecessary visits to the shops for provisions, whilst at the same time disposing of any evidence. He came upon the bright idea of butchering the bodies to provide a high protein diet of human meat for himself and his wife. The high protein diet seemed to have been effective, as Mrs. Bean began to produce little baby beans. 14 little baby beans in total, each with an unhealthy appetite for human flesh. As the beanie babies grew up, and in turn through incest produced beanies of their own, their cooking pots increased in size dramatically. Over 2 decades, generations of beanie babies grew up in Benane Cave, refining their skills of murder and cannibal cuisine, including the now lost art of salting and pickling the flesh. Finds of curiously preserved but decaying body parts were discovered washed up on the surrounding beaches in the area. The local authorities had by now established what must have been, and what must still be to this date, the longest missing persons list ever produced. Although mass searches of the area were carried in order to locate either the missing people or their murderers, nobody ever thought to search the depths of Benane Cave. As the years went by and the family grew older, and thanks to their high protein diet, bigger, and as the family grew, so did their appetite. As many as half a dozen victims will be ambushed and killed at a time in a military-style operation by the Stony Bean Army. The bodies were taken back to the cave to be carefully prepared for the murder by the larder by the women folk. Oh man, told you it was Grisly. Even in the best planned operations, however, things sometimes go wrong. It happened one evening for the Stony Bean Army when that must be the cave, eh? Right. It happened one evening for the Stony Bean Army when they attacked a man and his wife as they were returning home from a nearby fair. One group pulled the woman from her horse and had her stripped and disemboweled before the other group had chance to wrestle the man to the ground. Realising the fate that was about to fall him, he fought desperately to escape, driving his horse into and over his attackers as he fought for his life. A group of 20 or so people, also returning from the fair, happened upon the scene. After a brief and violent exchange, the Stony Bean Army found itself, for the first time ever, at a numerical disadvantage, and promptly retreated back to the cave to consider the situation. I bet they did. As they retreated, they left behind the mutilated body of a woman as evidence, a score of witnesses, and one very angry husband. The man was taken before the Chief Magistrate of Glasgow, who, after hearing the tale and putting this together with his longest missing persons list ever and the many reports of the mysterious pickled body parts, decided to take the matter straight to the top. King James I promptly arrived in Ayrshire with a small army of 400 men and a pack of tracker dogs, and together with a band of local volunteers, launched one of the biggest manhunts the country had ever seen. Like before, the search was extended through the Ayrshire countryside and coastline, and like before, nothing was discovered. That was, however, until the dogs picked up the scent of decaying human flesh. Whilst passing a partly waterlogged cave, the manhunt was closing in. By torchlight, the troops entered Benane Cave, and with swords drawn, they proceeded down the mile-long twisting passageway to the inner depths of the Stony Bean family lair. Nothing could have prepared them for the sight they witnessed that day. The damp walls of the cave were strewn with row upon row of human limbs and body parts, like meat hanging in a butcher's shop. Other areas of the cave stored bundles of clothing, piles of watches and rings, and heaps of discarded bones from previous feasts. After a fight, the entire Stony Bean family, all 48 of them, were arrested and marched off to Edinburgh by the king himself. Their crimes were considered so heinous that the normal justice system, for which Scotland is so renowned, was abandoned, and the entire family was sentenced to death. The following day, the 27 men of the family met a fate similar to that of their victims, by having their legs and arms cut off and being left to slowly bleed to death, watched by their women. The 21 women were burned like witches in huge fires. And so the ballad of Stony Bean records their end. I'll do you the blessing of singing it to you, but I'll give you the lyrics. They've hung them high in Edinburgh town, and likewise are their kin, and the wind blows cold on their bones, and to hell they're again. That was terribly done, sorry, but they've hung them high in Edinburgh town, and likewise all their kin, and the wind blows cold on their bones, and to hell they all have gone. It's written in like Scottish dialect. Please note, however, that although the tale of Stony Bean and his infamous family is recorded in several notable publications, factual documentation is lacking to validate the events. See, I've heard it with English propaganda. You look on Wiki and that, but I think on Wiki it gives you the... Well, it says Alexander Sormybean was said to be the head of a 48-member clan in Scotland in the 16th century. He was reportedly executed for the mass murder and cannibalism of over 1,000 people. The story appears in the Newgate Calendar, a crime catalogue of Newgate Prison in London. Whilst historians tend to believe Bean never existed, or that his story has been greatly exaggerated, it has passed into local folklore and become part of the Edinburgh Tories industry. So, if you're interested anyway, go and look on Wiki and it tells you what their version of the ins and outs of it are. I've not read the Wiki page on it, I'm sorry, I haven't been really, I was skimming it there, forgetting that I'm recording. But anyway, that's the tourist board story of